Today, so much can feel out of control. In terms of business, there's so much that's happening with the economy, with AI, with the labor shortage, with all sorts of change and challenges. On a personal level, you're dealing with all of the cost of things, the time. How do you find time for all of this and the demands of other people who are looking to you for support through all of this? You can feel really out of control and stressed because so much of this is out of your control. What we're going to get into today is what is in your control that can help you shift all of this. Hi, I'm Ravi Tangri, and this is SOULgineering, your life and your work. And what this is about is finding those tiny little pressure points where you can shift or transform things so that you can bring more of your heart, more of your soul into all of your life, into your work, into your play, your family, your community, everything that you do. And today, what we are going to dive into is what I have found happening around with my clients, with friends, that there's a ever growing sense of tiredness and overwhelm because so much is happening in the world. I mean, let's be honest. Things have not stopped for 5 years since the pandemic hit. There was all sorts of stuff that happened there, going to from the lockdowns to working from home, educating kids at home, hybrid workplaces. And then as we came back into the workplace, people realized they didn't want to do that. So you had mass exodus, the great resignation, people leaving jobs for better quality of life and supply chain issues. Now there's so much that can seem out of your control. If you are a business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a leader, there's the economy, there's the impact of AI on how you do your work, on jobs, on everything else, the labor shortage that we're dealing with, that we cannot find and retain good people. Tariffs are on, tariffs are off, supply chain issues. And a lot of people aren't buying because of the uncertainty. On a personal level, all of this is having an impact too. There's so much uncertainty. Things are getting expensive. Do you buy? Do you not? What's happening? There's no time because you're pulled in 1,000 different directions. You are probably one of the strong ones. And so you are the one that everybody else turns to, that for support. They have demands. They need this, whether it's at work, at home, your friends, community. And there's not a lot left for you, is there? So it can leave you with just a sense of feeling really out of control, and the stress can build. Well, the brutal truth is that most of this is out of your control. You can't control what happens to the economy. You can't control what happens to the prices. You can't control all of these issues. There are only certain things that you can control, and yet we delude ourselves and stress ourselves by trying to control it all. But really, so much is out of your control. What you can do, this is like a complex system, and I learned how to work with complexity in my first career as a nuclear physicist. And the secret to complexity is not trying to control it, not trying to complicate it by analyzing it and figuring out what to do. It's to find the tiny, simple pressure points that make a huge impact and that can transform the whole system, where you put a little bit of effort in here, a little bit here, and all of a sudden the entire system shifts. And that's part of what we need to do here, is focus on those areas, those pressure points that we can control. The other thing that exacerbates this is that a lot of the stress, a lot of the reactions we have are not just from what's happening now. There's a lot of stuff we all have, past conditioning, unresolved stuff from our past that can get triggered by things that are happening now. And so it can feel very out of control because this is old stuff. And when we react to that, we don't like to feel this stuff. We try to bottle it up. We try to stay in control, try to do that, but you can't do that. You try to bottle it up and it either just festers or it does go away for a while and then it erupts. And it's like we're afraid to really feel this stuff. So what options do we have? Fact is, we can't control what's happening out there. We can't control the emotions, but you know what we can control? Whether or not we hold them down, suppress them, or allow them to express and release in a healthy way. And there's a key word here that is going to sound, to be honest, terrifying to a lot of people. And that is surrender. What I'm drawing on here is work of many people. Michael Singer, a lot of people know his work from The Untethered Soul. I love his book, The Surrender Experiment, where he really talks about surrender. Eckhart Tolle, who speaks about being present, not being in the emotions, being observant of them. David Hawkins was a genius who very scientifically and rigorously over decades used kinesiology and muscle testing to map levels of consciousness and found that a lot of times in his first book, Power versus Force, he explains this spectrum of consciousness, but one of his later books, Letting Go, is all about surrender. And it's about how it's not in any way useful to be present in these lower, heavier emotions. In this scale of consciousness that he had, a lot of the lower levels that he's mapped are things like fear and anger and shame and apathy and guilt and all of these things. These are below on his scale what he's mapped as 200. And these are very self-destructive and very limiting emotions. And these are the ones that we don't like to feel. Where things start to shift, once you get above 200, you get to courage, which is that ability to say, okay, I'm feeling this, but I need to move forward. I need to go on. And you can move on to various levels of peace and love and joy at the higher levels, but you cannot get there if you're staying stuck in the lower pieces. And what David Hawkins and Michael Singer and Eckhart Tolle all speak of is about being able to step out of the emotions, letting the emotions be there, letting them feel. And if you do, they tend to process themselves out. Now, if it's very deep emotions of anxiety, fear, anger, it can take time, but it's that act of being present with it, not being in it, realizing you are not those feelings. They are just things that are happening in you. Now, it may seem overwhelming. For some people, they don't like to feel all of that caca, all of that heaviness. And I can totally understand that. But I then draw my learnings from people like Viktor Frankl, who wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning, and he survived the Nazi concentration camps. And he said the people that truly survived those experiences weren't the ones that just stayed in the trauma, but they found the light. They were able to step away from all of that heaviness all around them, and they found little bits of light that they could focus on. It's like if he was lying in his bunk and he could, if he tilted his head a certain way, he could see a corner of a window and see the blue sky there. And he held on to that. And that was what gave him lightness while he was sort of separated from all the heaviness around him. It was holding on to that light and not being in the caca. So these are interesting concepts. I find Eckhart Tolle describes this very well. He doesn't necessarily just go into how to. David Hawkins gets a little bit into the how to. Michael Singer does a lot with his books and his e-courses. I've drawn on them, but on other things as well, to find ways that we can step away from that, to allow those emotions to be there, to process out so that we can then go to the higher levels on Hawkins scales, feel peace, feel joy, feel love, without being weighed down by all of that, where we're a lot more resourceful in dealing with the challenges that we have to deal with today. Because let's face it, if you're in anxiety, if you're in fear, I appreciate all of these things are going on. If you're angry at things, there is not one productive thing that fear or that anxiety does to help you move forward. In fact, by creating the stress response, it actually makes you less productive. Part of the stress response is 30 hormonal, 100 chemical changes that go through your body, poisoning you, that make you less effective. And one of the things is it shuts down your brain. You don't need the brain with a fight or flight response. You know, the saber-toothed tiger is coming. You either fight or run or freeze and hope it won't see you. You do not sit down and do a cost-benefit analysis. So staying with those emotions or allowing those to still be there, keeping on pushing them down, does nothing productive. And in fact, it actually makes you less effective. You will be far more resourceful. In fact, that's one of the things David Hawkins points out in terms of problem solving. The focus is not on the problem. The focus is on the emotion that's behind the problem. And if you can release that, things shift and you find new opportunities. So how do we actually step out of all of this anxiety, all of this stuff? First of all, let me say, this is a learned process. So just like going to the gym, if you try to go and press a few 100 pounds, you would damage yourself. These are muscles that you need to work out, and it can take time. You work with smaller feelings of anxiety or fear or anger, whatever, and build up. And if it's a large issue, it can take time. You build up your ability, right? So do not try to do things on things that are overwhelming you totally right away, because you probably will fail. And so one of the key things to realize here when you're looking at how to, it's understanding how our brains work. We make pictures in our brains. Our brains work in pictures. Okay. They do not work in words. The words are just a way to create the pictures that we react to. Think about it. If I was to ask you how many windows are in your home, how would you get the answer? In your mind's eye, you walk around your house and you count the windows. Even people who can't visualize. Our brains work in pictures. What the words do is they create pictures. That's what we respond and react to. Okay. Now there's two types of pictures, associated and dissociated. To give you a sense of that, what I'd like you to do is think of something you absolutely love to do. Okay. Could be hobby, could be time with friends, time with family, something you absolutely love to do, and go back in your mind's eye to the last time you were involved in that and all of the things, hear what you were hearing, feel the feelings, everything people were saying and how it felt inside, how much you love it. Feel that. Okay. Almost like you're right there. Okay. Now, this is going to sound a little weird, but almost as if you could take that picture and push it away, push it way away till it's like 30 meters away from you, tiny, teeny tiny, like a postage stamp. Make it tiny and dim and dark. What do you notice happens to the feelings when you do that? They go away. Now, take that picture, bring it back, make it big, bright, colorful, and jump back into that memory almost as if you're right there. And what do you notice? The feelings come back. Associated images are where we are in the picture and we get all the feelings, and it's like we're reliving it. A dissociated image is like we're looking at a TV screen or looking at a photo album, and you see it, you may remember that, but you're not connected to the feelings. So it's like if you come back from a vacation and you're showing everyone these pictures and all that, and you're so excited, and they're going, yeah, that looks nice. That's really pretty. But they're not feeling the same energy because you are still associated into that. They're just looking at pictures. It's dissociated. Yeah, it's beautiful. Nice beach. They're great. But they have not had the experience of being there. And a few weeks or months or years later, you may look at those pictures and you may have difficulty associating back. You remember sort of, but you're not as connected because now you're dissociated. Okay. So what we do a lot of times when these feelings come up, we are associating into them and we're feeling them. So this applies, with what I had you do, something you love, but with all these feelings of anxiety or fear, what we do is we sit and we marinate in them, which really is not healthy. We're associated into them. So what you need to be able to do is step back and just sort of, it's almost like you can observe them. So the one thing that I do sometimes is I work with my coaching clients, and I have them put their hands on their chest with crossed hands with the palms facing out. And it's almost like you push out and you push that feeling out of you. So it's sitting in front of you and you just let it be there. It's a way of just almost like getting some distance to it. Think about it. Our language talks about this. Remember, words create pictures. So what's the language we say when someone's overwhelmed? We say, step back, get some perspective. What these are doing are triggers to dissociate and push that feeling associated with that, whatever's there outside of you. And then what I find is when I do that, one of the things that often happens if I'm in heavy emotions is, I can breathe. And then you just sit and just notice. And what will happen is that those feelings, the natural state for them is for them to flow and move. What happens when we bottle them up is they get stuck. So by dissociating in this way, gives you a chance to breathe, just notice and observe those emotions. And it's just letting them be. You're not ignoring them. You're not sticking your head in the sand. You're just being present with it. Realize you are not those feelings. They are just things that were happening in you. And you just allow them to process. So one of the things, like I say, that triggers almost like you push it away from your chest with your hands. You sort of interlock your fingers with your palms facing out on your chest and push it out. Another thing you can do a lot of times at work, we have chairs on wheels, and you can almost like push yourself away from the desk and roll back and imagine that feeling staying there. I teach this sometimes to people to deal with feelings when someone says something in a meeting and triggers them. And I get an image sometime if I've taught the whole team that someone's saying something and all of a sudden the whole table pushes away from it. That might be a cue that they need to reconsider what they're doing. Now, you may not be able to do this where you are, the thing with your hands and so on. What I get sometimes with the executives that I work with is to say, look, if you're feeling that overwhelmed, you might feel a little silly pushing this away with your chest if people are around you. Go to the bathroom, go into a stall and just push that away. As you learn to do this, it will get easier. And you can start to move away from this. And it's again building a muscle. So don't use this with things that are hugely overwhelming right away. Build your capacity and just do it step by step. I find with a lot of things, it only takes a few minutes and all of a sudden that anxiety or that fear, the anger, the guilt, whatever it was, starts to drift away in just minutes. With other things, it can take longer, and that's fine because think about it. You've been bottling this stuff up probably for a lot of your life. it can take a little while to let go. That's fine. Just be gentle on yourself and do it step by step, one thing at a time, and just notice what happens. Find what works for you. And as you do this more and more, you will find it becomes easier and easier. And you'll find that surrender is actually your biggest resource for moving forward effectively.
I got the energy, it's all I need to fit.